Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host Thomas Tyree from On the Hot Podcast. Today, I have some bonus content for you guys. The content I will be covering today will be in the sport of basketball inside the NBA world. If you guys haven't checked out episode 107, it's now available on all four of our platforms: our Instagram account, our Facebook account, our YouTube account, and our Apple Podcast account. So let's go ahead and dive into this bonus content I have for you guys today. I'll be sharing my list of the craziest NBA trades that occurred during the NBA draft and NBA history. So these are my top 5 craziest NBA trades that happened during the NBA draft, and the rest is history. So let's start at number 1. Is the 1987 NBA draft when the Seattle SuperSonics traded Scotty Pippen to the Chicago Bulls. Imagine if the Seattle SuperSonics never traded Scotty Pippen to the Chicago Bulls during the 1987 draft, which Scotty Pippen would become the 3rd overall pick in the 1987 draft. There's a lot of things that could have potentially never happened if Scotty Pippen was rightfully drafted to the Seattle SuperSonics instead of being traded that night. There would be no dynasty that never would have took place with the Chicago Bulls. We know the dynasty that happened with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and countless others that was a part of that journey in Chicago that went on 2 historic runs, 2 historic three-peats in NBA history. That dynasty would have never happened if Scottie Pippen was never traded to the Chicago Bulls come draft night. And Michael Jordan's playoff record without Scottie Pippen, he's 1-9 all time in NBA playoff series without Scottie Pippen. So there's a lot of history that could have been erased from the history books in NBA history if Scottie Pippen never went to the Chicago Bulls. There's legends like Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, and several other Hall of Fame players that never got a chance to win an NBA championship due to the fact that the Chicago Bulls were an absolute threat and were the best team throughout the 90s. If this never happens, we don't know what could have happened with Michael Jordan's legacy. Would it have been considered as the GOAT not having his tag team partner, his right hand man by his side is Scottie Pippen if he was never traded to Chicago Bulls? It's just mind boggling to think for me, but that's number 1. Number 2 is the 1996 draft when the Charlotte Hornets traded Kobe Bryant to the Los Angeles Lakers. And the Charlotte Hornets has been one of the worst franchises in NBA history. I mean, they have lacked success. They have never made it to an Eastern Conference Finals. They never won an NBA title, never made an NBA Finals appearance. So when you do the math on that, they rarely have been a true contender in the NBA since their existence. So the Charlotte Hornets could have been a winning franchise, building their franchise around an all-time great, the late great Kobe Bryant. Nobody knew how special Kobe Bryant was going to be, obviously, during that 1996 NBA draft. Kobe Bryant was only 18 years old, coming straight from high school, straight into the NBA. But everyone that was a part of that Charlotte Hornets organization, especially during that time, during the NBA draft during 1996, they got to sleep at night, put their head on the pillow, and just think what could have been if they never traded one of the greatest NBA players in NBA history, Kobe Bryant, traded his draft rights to the Los Angeles Lakers. What could have been for the Charlotte Hornets having an all-time great, which Kobe Bryant would have won some championships with the Charlotte Hornets if he was a part of that franchise. Mind-boggling to me as well. Number 3, the 2011 NBA draft when the Indiana Pacers traded Kawhi Leonard to the San Antonio Spurs. Now, during the 2011 NBA draft, Kawhi Leonard was the 15th overall pick in the 2011 NBA draft. He was a good two-way player in college, averaging 12 points per game and 9 rebounds per game at his time in college with San Diego State University. I thought the Indiana Pacers, looking back at this, made a huge mistake trading away Kawhi Leonard, and especially trading him to a dynasty that was already in the make, a dynasty that's been around, that was around for a very long time in the NBA, the San Antonio Spurs. They still had their dynasty going. They still had some all-time greats playing for them: Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker. 3 players that are one of the greatest to ever do it in the NBA. Greg Popovich leading the way as a coach, one of the greatest coaches of all time. You trade away Kawhi Leonard to the San Antonio Spurs when they have all those pieces still there in the midst of their prime. And Kawhi Leonard, the rest is history. Kawhi Leonard became a San Antonio Spur and learned from some all-time greats and actually won a championship with the San Antonio Spurs in 2014 when they beat the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. So really a home run hit for the San Antonio Spurs, led them to another championship during that dynasty run. Imagine if Kawhi Leonard was never traded to the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, the Indiana Pacers could have had their own big team. They could, at this time, these are the following players that they had. They had Paul George, Danny Ranger, Lance Stevenson, Roy Hilbert. And you have all those players, and you add Kawhi Leonard to the mix. Whew, they would have been an unstoppable team. They were already a team in the Eastern Conference in the early 2010s. I was giving teams like the Miami Heat, the Boston Celtics, the Chicago Bulls a lot of problems in the Eastern Conference. They made an Eastern Conference Finals appearance during the early 2010s when they faced against the Miami Heat. If they had Kawhi Leonard with those group of players that I just mentioned, they might have went on to win a championship in Indiana. And I think they still regret that to this day, that they let Kawhi Leonard go and traded him to the San Antonio Spurs. Trade number 4. The Philadelphia 76ers trading Jayson Tatum's draft rights to the Boston Celtics for Markelle Fultz in 2017. Now, if you guys remember, just a few years ago, 6 years is coming up to the date that this happened, the Boston Celtics had the number 1 overall pick in the 2017 draft. The Philadelphia 76ers traded the number 1 overall pick, which ended up being Markelle Fultz. And this was pretty big move. The Celtics during the 2017 NBA draft. There was Lonzo Ball that was a part of this NBA draft. There was Markelle Fultz that was a part of this NBA draft as well. But they did a smart thing. After they traded away from the number 1 overall pick, they sat back. The number 3 pick was a good option for them. They went ahead and drafted Jayson Tatum, somebody that was a part of Coach K's offense with the Blue Devils and Duke University. And obviously the Boston Celtics benefited from this trade, getting a generational talented player like Jayson Tatum. And the Philadelphia 76ers went on to grow frustrated with Markelle Fultz. Unfortunately, in his short time with the Philadelphia 76ers, it just didn't work out. He didn't have a great jump shot. He couldn't shoot the ball and missed a chunk of games, which led to him being traded before the NBA trade deadline February 2019. Nearly 3 years later, for him being the number 1 overall pick in the 2017 draft. That's just mind-boggling to me that all went down. And then number 5 is the Atlanta Hawks and the Dallas Mavericks swapping Luka Doncic and Trae Young during the 2018 NBA draft. In 2018, the Atlanta Hawks selected Luka Doncic as the number 3 overall pick in the 2018 draft. He was then traded to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for the 5th overall pick and a future first-round pick. The Atlanta Hawks drafted Trae Young a few picks later, and the rest is history. The historic swap between these two players. But when you look back at it, it's actually, when you think how crazy it was that this swap happened during this draft, it's actually benefited both franchises ever since this trade happened during the 2018 NBA draft. Thus far, both players, Trae Young and Luka Doncic, both have represented their franchises very well. And both have helped their franchises at least get to an Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals appearance. Obviously, Trae Young doing it with the Atlanta Hawks in the East, and Luka Doncic doing it with the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference. Luka Doncic and Trae Young will always be compared to each other for the rest of their respective careers due to the fact that this swap happened during the 2018 draft. But the question mark just still becomes, which player will help their franchise win an NBA championship first? I think Luka Doncic is staying put in Dallas for a very long time. Mark Cuban is not going to let him go anywhere. I promise you that. And I think, even though there was some question marks going on with Trae Young, the coaching, and the front office, I think Trae Young is there to stay in Atlanta for the sake of the future. So it'll be interesting to see which player can help their franchise win a championship first. But those are my top 5 craziest NBA trades that transpired during the NBA draft over the last several years in the NBA. But that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.